One.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Orange County Industrial Development Agency meeting for February 21st, 2024. I would ask Bill to do the roll call for the meeting.
Sure. Jeffrey Christ.
Here.
Dean Tamburri.
Here.
Dr. Vincent Odock.
Yes.
Mark Green.
Here.
Susan Walski.
Here.
Giovanni Palladino.
Here.
6 members are present. Mr. James Rinaldi is not here. And I will, staff, myself, Bill Fioravanti, Kelly Riley, Susan Katzoff, our general counsel, Jose Rojas doing AV, and that's everything.
Thank you, Bill. And we have proof of notice was included in our meeting packet for today's meeting. And the first item of business is consideration of the minutes from the January 17th, 2024 board meeting. Any additions, corrections to those minutes? They were distributed previously. Would anyone care to make a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make the motion.
Motion to approve by Giovanni. Second to that motion
I'll second the motion.
by Susan. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. And Bill mentioned James Rinaldi is not present today. And I need to inform everybody he submitted his letter of resignation from the Orange County IDA. And we would need to acknowledge that resignation with a motion.
I'll make the motion. I'd just like to say I'm going to miss Jim. He was excellent on the board, and I hope him all the best in the future.
Thank you, Dean. Second to that motion?
I'll second it with sadness. I truly enjoyed working with him, and he taught me a lot. So I wish him all the best, and I hope he enjoys his retirement.
I concur with all those comments, and I'm sure the full board does too. And
Staff as well.
I did reach out to him. I left a message. I did not hear back. I think Bill will be doing some further things.
Yeah, and I certainly did communicate our appreciation. He was here during a very difficult time when it was not very popular to be an IDA board member. I'm not sure how popular it is right now, but it's better than that, I can promise you that.
We have a popularity rating?
Yeah, right. And he helped drag us to this point, especially with things we were still trying to reinvent and figure out ourselves on the finance side. So, I echo Mark's sentiments as well. And I certainly expressed that to him, so we thank him for his service.
Definitely. So we have a motion and a second on the floor to accept that resignation. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Moving on to the CEO report. Bill, please.
Well, I wrote it for you now, so I'm going to try and minimize my talk here. Everything is in there. Let me know if you have any questions on it. The only thing that I said we were going to, but Jeff and I, as well as Sue, of course, we attended the New York State EDC annual conference in Albany, and it was very informative. They actually have a little summary I'd like to share with you separately, just so you know some of the key breakout sessions that we were part of, and some of the general session that was talked about. It was very informative, helpful. Great to have Jeff there as well, and we were able to spend some time with Sue as well. So that's outside of that report. That's the only other thing I want to share with you. It was a great conference.
I would say, as attending myself, it was very well attended, and a number of interesting topics, which we'll be incorporating into discussion as we go forward. Any questions for Bill on his report? Hearing none, we'll move on to our next item, which is the Governance Committee reports, and I'll start with the Governance Committee. I did ask, just for my clarification at the beginning of that meeting from Sue Katzoff, the language on what things the Governance Committee is responsible for, and we're supposed to review governance trends, recommend updates to the authority's corporate governance principles, advise appointing authorities on the skills and experiences of potential board members, to examine ethical and conflict of interest issues, and something I don't know that we've done in the past, do board self-evaluations, so that's something we'll have to look into further. Recommend bylaws, which include rules and procedures for conduct of the board business. Any questions on that part of my report?
That sounds like a full-time job.
It could get to be, for sure. During that committee meeting, which was just last week, we got into some discussion on the UTEP, and I might draw your attention to the last page of today's board packet, which shows recommendations and thoughts that Bill had on the UTEP, which is our tax exemption policy. We've discussed it in the past. It's been a few years since we revised it. The committee was in basic agreement to the recommendations Bill has here. It's really just the beginning of the committee review of this process. We're in touch with our council on just how to get to the point of a draft agreement, or a draft policy, I should say. Anything you would like to add to that, Bill?
I'd just like to say that basically this outline represents my approach of trying to start at 50,000 feet and say, where are we? What do we agree with? What are our priorities? What should we be focusing on? And challenging us in a couple areas, like, what are we gonna do with renewables, or then at the second section, relook at the former administration. In my opinion, I'm very confident this is the case. The former administration reduced some of our pilots for explicitly warehouse distribution and hotels to levels that no one would even apply for in an effort to appease the senator, I think as a misdirection, so that he wasn't looking at where the malfeasance was going on. So in addition to talking about what are the key areas, our priorities, we also have to look at some of these other considerations, especially things that the prior administration's changed that we may feel differently about. And then at the end, they're just under other considerations. The senator sent out a letter to all our taxing jurisdictions in Orange County, local municipalities, school districts, et cetera, encouraging them to opt out of the 45B. And at least one has already, the Newburgh schools, which is enormous and a big share of anything related to property taxes in the Newburgh area, of course. It's a huge portion of that. They are opting out of it. So it's something we need to consider. Without that opportunity, it may drive more applicants to the IDA, and we have to figure out how we want to handle that. If we want to have a 45B equivalent type of pilot schedule like we've had here in the past, some of the considerations like that. And the last consideration was that the monitor will be assigned most likely. We'll have someone in March or April, it seems like at the latest, and it is within their powers to rescind some changes to the UTEP. So that's why we've been trying to be careful with the timing here. We're starting the process now, so we're not waiting until they're here, as we've talked about, but we don't want to make any substantive changes, until the person's in place, most likely. At least that has been Sue's guidance to us.
So I just have a question on that.
Sure.
So they have the ability to rescind UTEP changes. Do they have the ability to change our UTEP as is?
I didn't see any language that suggests that they can do anything. They can just kind of veto changes, right, Sue?
Correct.
Okay, just,
Correct. And so my advice has been, because, and I apologize, I don't have the actual statute in front of me, but my advice has been not to amend it until the monitor's on board, because it just creates exposure for you, because he or she would have the authority to revoke those changes or not agree with them. So doing the process that Bill has started doing now, it was recommended, that was my recommendation. Like, there is nothing preventing you from starting to outline what you think you want your initiatives to be, how you want your UTEP to be framed, so that you are trying to incentivize the types of projects you want to see. But the actual, final approval, I would recommend not happen until the monitor's on board.
Can I ask a
Mark?
question?
Sure.
I mean, first of all, Bill, thank you.
Sure.
Right. When do you foresee us being able to actually talk about some of these things? I mean, today or next meeting? I mean, throw out ideas, get a pulse of
Actually,
what
Jeff and I
we're
were just
thinking?
talking about how to do that, and I think it was suggested that governance was really the route to do it, and we don't have another one until August, so we would schedule another meeting. I don't know if we finished that conversation, but
Yes.
most likely a governance committee meeting, or, I thought we had a good discussion last week.
Yes.
Yeah.
Giovanni, Dean, Jeff and myself, so the only alternative is, the other alternative is if we want to have a separate ad hoc committee for this, and the chairman wanted to hand select a group of people to do that. That was kind of.
I would say at a high level, it's appropriate for board members to make comments now. I don't see it as a time when we'd have a half-hour-long discussion in detail, but if you have some general thoughts, you're welcome to.
Well, no, I just, I think as I was looking at like your top priorities, right? I just kind of said, well, if I was gonna rank these by me, it would probably be, the high-tech projects 1, the adaptive reuse 2, right? Because I think that's a real opportunity.
Good point.
Manufacturing would be 3 in my eyes. Renewables would be 4, and then housing would probably be 5, right? If I had to rank these in my order.
Are these in your top 5, would you say? Or
Oh, no, I
your
think these
top-
are all fantastic.
Great.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
I can't think of anything that's different. Sue wants to say something.
No, I'm just thinking maybe this would be a good time for us to, download that UTEP and do a markup on it and turn that in so we can start collecting everybody's thoughts on it. I mean, it's easy enough to go on a Saturday, download it off the website and just, do a markup.
Of what we have now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it seems like you're already kind of doing that. So I
Yes.
just wanted to take 30 seconds to give you
Yes.
my
No, that's
opinion.
very.
And then when you're doing your voodoo, you can say, well, we do listen.
It's gonna be a little more scientific than
Well,
that.
I'm sure it will be. For me personally, the warehouse distribution, I don't know why it's on here as far as we look. Is it to make
Because it was reduced to 6 years, which means we basically don't have a product for
Right, but
warehouse.
I'll be honest with you, I don't necessarily disagree with that, right?
Right.
I think, the concern I have is that, we have a lot to offer in a minimum amount of space, and, hotels would be, my number 1. I think our community very quickly is becoming an entertainment community, with Warwick doing what they're doing with their sports facilities, with
It's a tourist destination.
we
Sure.
are now becoming, a destination, and Middletown building out their high school facilities, hosting state championships. I mean, we're just
Yeah.
not, capitalizing on the things that people have been done around here. So that would be one that I would love to see really move up to a priority. And then, as far as, the rest of it, that's out of my control, so I have no real opinion on that. But that's one man's opinion, so I will now move on.
And sir, if I could just
Yes.
go back to Sue's comment, I think I'll share the UTEP again, just you send it out to everyone. If you want to mark it up and that's how you
Yeah.
respond, but I'd like to offer it to anyone to whatever format or way that you want to provide some feedback. It could be by marking it up, it could be a single sheet, it could be marking up this sheet and say,
Just something, like I mean,
however
on
you want to
here,
get us your feedback.
I don't see, and to me is a priority, is agritourism.
Mhm.
That falls under hotels, but we also have all the wineries, all those microbreweries that attract people from all over the world to come up for a day in Orange County.
And it's already in our, I was gonna say that, tourism destination, that's already in the UTEP, but I appreciate you bringing it up, so it's back up here, as I hope that still is in our top, right? And so as a category, but maybe we need further
We need to maybe
specificity
hone
around
it a
things
little
like.
bit.
Yeah.
And that can actually fit in the adaptive reuse, like say
Yeah.
winery. Doc.
Yeah, I echo what Mark just mentioned about the hotels, tying that to houses too, because people are coming in, the influx into this area. We look at both hotels and the housing aspect as well.
Well, housing really falls great under adaptive reuse, as the malling of America seems to be downsizing, and the focus is more on a downtown area than going to the mega malls. You're gonna see more and more, just my prediction, in the next 5 to 10 years, vacant malls sitting around.
Yeah, Giovanni raised that in our governance meeting, absolutely. Big opportunity. Grayfields, you just call them, right, exactly, which is an interesting term.
And Dean, I think you heard about a housing project in another county?
Yes,
Recently?
Westchester IDA is working on a large housing project currently. So.
I think all this discussion is very valuable.
It's healthy.
And the committee I know and myself welcome comments at any point in the process. I think this higher level discussion right now is just right. I had envisioned getting this step done and with guidance from Sue, get to a point of a draft UTEP at some point that then we can really say we're going in the right direction or we're not.
Right.
I don't know, Sue, if you would feel even a draft UTEP should wait until the monitor's here, or can we start to put that together?
I would start working on that so that when the monitor gets on board and is fully versed, you have something to share with the monitor. There's no sense waiting, you're not adopting it, you're working on it.
Yeah,
So
makes
I would
sense.
Move
Yeah,
ahead.
definitely.
So it's my intention, I think, Bill's and the committees to get input from the whole board. We're trying in the effort where Bill has guided us to do some of the detailed work at the committee level, so our board meetings are 2 or 3 hours long.
Yes.
But that is not intended to cut anybody out of the discussion or ideas from being considered.
Dave, lastly, regarding the UTEP, Bill, can you just again, I mean, we've talked about it, maybe it's been the process of how this has to be approved, right? It has
Yes.
to go out to, if you could all mind.
I'm gonna ask Sue to do that,
Okay.
because there's a
I
public hearing
appreciate it.
involved and
Yeah,
things like that.
I
Sue, can you
remember
s-
how it had to be done, but I'm.
Yeah, please.
Sure. So, in order to amend your UTEP, you have to send out notice to all the impacted taxing jurisdictions. So, in your case, that would be every school district in the county, plus the county itself, any towns, any taxing authority within the county. And then you notify them of the meeting at which you are going to consider amending your UTEP. And they have the opportunity to come in or submit comments in favor or in opposition to the proposed changes.
So that
So
would,
it is more involved than editing. Any other policy you change does not require that kind of notice.
so a meeting like that may have to be in obviously a large location possibly, and you have to be
Yeah.
present for all that. et cetera.
Potentially.
Okay. Just.
Might be.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
It
you.
certainly probably wouldn't work out to have it here.
No.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yep.
Anything else on UTEP part at this point? We
We
are,
will share that, I'm sorry,
Yes.
just again, we'll send it out to kind of spur any other thoughts, however you want to get feedback additionally to us, please do.
I need
Oh,
copies.
and Kelly just printed them
Oh,
out for us.
thank you,
so
Kelly.
Thank you,
wonderful.
Kelly.
your question.
Would you
Well,
send-
I apologize, one more.
Thanks.
Any idea how many taxing jurisdictions?
What are there, 42 municipalities, I want to say, in the county? How many school districts?
Probably have about 73 different places between schools, towns, county level, village.
Yeah,
Okay.
a lot.
A lot of,
That's a-
there'll be a lot of opinions.
Some of them may not even bother though, I got it news for you.
And I would encourage you also, as you go through the process, to look at other IDAs and how they structure their UTEP. There's no right or wrong way, but you may want to look at categories, look at what your authority is, and then choose categories that fit that. You could choose, and I sent some of these to Bill just in listening, and I'm not saying these are the ones, but commercial manufacturing could be a category, adaptive reuse, historic renovation. Housing is huge in the state, and while I know some people are not in favor of it, there's almost no area I can think of where affordable workforce housing, I'm not talking about low-income housing, I'm talking about workforce housing, people who work for the municipalities. There's a shortage of housing that they can afford. So there's lots of ways you can structure your UTEP. I think larger categories make more sense than identifying a specific project type. Do you know what I'm saying? But again, there's no right or wrong, but there's lots of examples out there. So happy to help in any way I can.
Bill, can we exclude sectors? Or does everything have to be included?
No, we can certainly, this is our opportunity to define what we want to incentivize and what not. So, did you hear that, Sue? Just asking, Giovanni's asking if we could exclude sectors. And do we do that by
It's
actually?
not so much that Right, so it depends on how you define things. Yes, you can, as long as you have a rational basis for doing so. Yeah, and it's more so about saying what you want to incentivize. So some jurisdictions want to incentivize building on transit routes, right? Either trains or buses, because they're trying to reduce the number of cars in any one given area. Some jurisdictions want to incentivize manufacturing because they have an area where that's what they want to see. So it's what your priorities are, what you want to see come to your area, and how do you go about creating a policy that will provide the greatest incentive to what your priorities are.
Makes sense.
Thank you.
The committee's also looking at our local labor policy. We're trying to carefully understand what we have and how whether it's the hours counted or the worker days, to prove if they're meeting whatever the criteria is, 85% local labor, and how the exemptions might be looked at. So it gets fairly complicated, and we have more work to do there.
That's a tricky one.
Yeah.
It is.
It may end up just being how we interpret our current policy, or if we clarify aspects of it. So just so you know, that's kind of,
Yeah,
it's nuanced type work.
I'm
with that.
thinking twice now we've had projects need to come in and look for an exemption for part of it because of the specialty work that's now
Exactly.
involved in building these days.
It's all over.
Yeah.
You know, I think looking back, you know, if we're incentivizing those type of, if we're saying, you know, on one hand, you know, we want some of these higher end things, that is going to happen, but I have to believe, you know, there are ways to ensure that we make sure that our local labor is benefiting from this.
For sure.
I mean, if not, then I
Well,
think we
yeah.
need to look in the mirror.
Obviously, because the tax return, you know, the income return to the county and to local municipalities for laborers being employed is huge.
Yeah.
Not to mention it's the right thing.
Mhm.
We're giving incentives.
Good point.
The construction should be done here by local workers.
And the other part of the meeting involved executive session where we discussed personnel, and suggesting to the board, and it's on the agenda here, we have an executive session today to bring the board up to speed on that.
Okay.
And that concludes my report, unless committee, am I leaving anything out?
Nope.
We good?
Good job.
Moving on to the Finance Committee, and our Finance Committee Chair, Mark Green, please, for your committee report.
All right.
And you can roll right into the new business as you see it fits your report.
You reel me in when you need to.
I just cut you loose.
So I am gonna bounce a little bit, and if it's confusing, it's Giovanni's fault. So I'll preface that.
Is it your turn this week?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm at the end of the table.
Let's look at page 5, and you'll see that it's starting again to morph into something so that we can see more trends going on, so you can see the actual
Page 6.
expenses.
You mean six?
6?
Mine's at page 5.
You might be on
I'm
your
sorry.
committee, yeah, this gets
I
confusing.
apologize. Yeah, it's Giovanni's fault. He stayed police together.
That intentionally?
My fault, page 6. You know, my goal, and we're going to talk a little bit about this when it comes to the vendor expenses as well, is to show trends so that way we can see and not try to think, well, what was it last month or the month before? That way we have a better handle on things.
At a glance. You're looking
Yeah,
at the history.
really at a glance. As far as, you know, kind of highlights from this, you know, we had one application fee that came in, so kudos, Bill, for doing your job. That was tongue-in-cheek, Bill.
I got it. Thank you.
You can also see, you know, our rent, which doesn't really change, but you also saw the interest earnings from our CD, over $43,000, which certainly helps. Then if you go down to expenses, you'll notice about halfway down the expenses, the insurance number is relatively high. That's because it was basically last year that got paid this year. So that's an expense that was paid for last year. As far as other little things that go, if you go down a little further, membership and events, that was, the chamber, annual fee, the New York EDC, the stuff that Bill has to be a part of to be a part of things. Now, if you go down a little bit further, you'll see local labor auditing fee expense, and this is I'll rename it the Giovanni expense. That's $13.50. So going forward, Giovanni, that is actual money that we're paying. It's not pass-through. And so, but even that $13.50, we have some debate about, so that might be backed out next month. But going forward, you're not gonna see the pass-through as far as that goes. And I'll refer you to the next page, which is your page 7. And this is something we kind of glance over, but if you go down to the bottom and under the banks, that orange bank and trust, that is the escrow account.
Okay.
So that is the actual account where business, people are putting money in and we're writing checks from that. And so, going forward, we're not gonna put that pass-through on this to confuse things.
Perfect,
To
thank you.
make it, so when you see that, that is actual money coming out of our pocket. Let me see, anything else as far as that goes? Any questions before I move on? I think I hit all the things that kind of jumped out. Everyone's good there?
Yep.
All right, then let's move to the next page, and let's talk a little bit about CDs. If you go down to the third CD, you'll see that the maturity date was February 20th of '24. It already has matured. It's in our account.
Closed yesterday.
Closed yesterday. And then if you go down to the last line, you'll see the Lakeland. That comes due on March 6th. So what we propose to do is we're going to wait until March 7th. We will combine these two for 2.5 million. And we are going to put it, I don't know if you all got your sheet as far as the team went out and got interest rates?
Just the finance committee.
Okay.
That's right.
But we're going to do a 6-month because the goal is after, and I'll talk a little bit about it, but basically this money's gonna be staggered every 3 months. So we're gonna have roughly 1 million, 1.5 million coming due every 3 months.
Thank you.
So this way, if we have to fund any shovel-ready or anything else, we're 3 months constantly with money in hand. And we're not going to have to basically, do the process every month.
So is that, the profit from that, the interest that we've earned, is that gonna go into regular checking, so we have it as operating capital?
I think we want to keep, right now, we're keeping roughly $500,000, if I'm not mistaken, in the
Yes.
checking account for expenses and for, what have you. I think we'd like to kind of keep it at that level.
So you're just gonna reinvest?
And so we'll kind of look and say, as long as we're at that roughly $500,000 in the checking, we're going to reinvest that
Okay.
money to continue to have that, so we're ready for some of these projects that we expect to have in the next, 1 to 5 years.
Okay.
So what we're going to do is, when those two come due, so theoretically on March 7th, before our next meeting, we're going to invest 2.5 million into a 6-month treasury through JP Morgan. That'll get us 5.2% annualized. That was the largest, safest one, continuing to always look to diversify. And then we have, so if you look again at this sheet, we'll have a rollover coming next January. If we do this 6-month, it means we'll have a rollover coming next September. And then we have the Connect One coming due in May, and
Year 1, 326.
326. The 326 we'll talk about next month, but we're just gonna put that in a 3-month. so it marries up with when the Connect 1. And then we'll probably put that into a 9-month. So then basically it would be September we'd have a rollover, January we'd have a rollover, March we'd have a rollover, and we would
They're
just
staggered the way they should be.
stagger it the way it should be and continue to maximize that and have, funds available whenever we need and good to go. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah,
Any
no.
questions on that?
So,
Nope.
and I appreciate, I know you did a lot of work on this, Mark.
Well, actually, Kelly does a lot of work on this. I'm just the eye candy.
You're mastermind.
She's the one that makes it all happen. So thank you, Kelly, and I mean that sincerely.
It's a good job.
So if there are no questions about that, then let's move to the vendor payment schedule. This is something that we talked about in committee. Again, my goal is to really kind of make this a little more user-friendly. My goal is, when I'm in my world, whenever I'm doing these kinds of things, I like to see 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, so that way I can just glance at this real quick and go, okay, is that $161.49, the very first one, is that different than the month before that? This way I can see if anything jumps out, if anything is something that I should be concerned about. But right now, we're kind of running on 1 month at a time, and it's hard to remember what happened previous month. So we are going to start putting stuff into
QuickBooks
thank
online?
you, QuickBooks, so that we're gonna be able to pull this out. And so this format's gonna change a little bit. But real quick, this month, stuff that jumped out, there really wasn't much that was out of line until you get down to where you see capacity marketing. There was some negotiation that was going on, some past bills, so while that negotiation was going on, we weren't paying those bills. The negotiation process is over, so we had to pay, and you can see the dates for those invoices. We had to pay those now, so that's why you see that one, kind of lump sum of $93.75. But that won't be recurring. Lost a little bit of train of thought as far as that goes. Yeah, so I think we're good on that. Nothing else really jumped out. I know we're doing some continued work on our web hosting, on our website. The other thing that's gonna change, if you look right in the middle of the page, you'll see the credit card payment process. Going forward, that's going to be one line as far as credit card number that's paid, and then you'll see the monthly credit card payments going back. But what we are going to do is, we are currently retyping all this information from the credit card statement. So we're just gonna attach the credit card
Yeah, that
statement.
makes much more sense.
This way, if that credit card number is out of line, very quickly, we'll just be able to look and kind of go down the line. So it's still gonna be accounted for, we're still gonna see everything, but again, trying to streamline our process. And so the same information will be available, but it just won't be on this sheet.
It'll be a
attractive.
report generated out of QuickBooks like pretty much everything else we're doing.
You
We're
know.
trying to get everything in there, exactly.
Any questions about the vendor payments? Does anything jump out that we should address? All right, then I'm gonna move on to the next page, which is your page. Is it page 9?
Page 9 here, yes.
Mm.
Oh, wait, no,
No,
I'm
no,
defining it
it's
too,
just
I'm with
Yeah,
you.
page 10.
Page
Exactly.
10, vendor
So,
contracts.
yeah, so these are, the monthly contracts. This is what I was talking about a little bit as far as the websites. This was, like the $300 was a kind of one time because of historical information we had to put into the website. The rest of it is pretty much in line with what we had. Did you think of anything that was out of line? I don't have anything in my notes, so
No.
I think it's pretty much where it should be. Any questions about that page?
No, I'm good with that.
And then it should be page 11 on yours. You know, the only thing that kind of jumped out at me was the panel broadcasting.
Page 10, yeah. Wait, no, I'm on
It's
financing.
page 11. It's page 11 for them.
Throw that one away.
And this was basically, if you look down, you'll see $1,400 in 2060. That was a catch-up for paying for podcasts that are doing well. And I read that, I think in your presidents, we're getting a lot of hits, a lot
Absolutely.
of traffic on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. We're doing great on that. We're doing great on our social media, especially in LinkedIn. We just had tremendous exposure on LinkedIn, which seems to be a great platform for us, of course. But as well, the radio as well. I'm going to refine some of the messaging that we put out there. We'll continue to do the podcast interviews. And that's something we'll probably take in-house and kind of produce ourselves in time. But they're promoting it as well as airing it, you know. So, and that too, I think we didn't dispute anything. They just hadn't sent us some bills, so that's why last month we had a huge rush of them, and now this is more standard for the month.
Any questions?
No, good.
Then I think we covered the January financials, we covered payables, we covered the CDs. That is it, so I guess it's back to you, sir.
Thank you for that efficient summary of our finance committee meeting, Mark. And we need a motion that can include all three of those items, I believe, to be accepted by the board. If anyone would care to make that motion on the financials, payables, and CD decision-making.
I'll make them go.
No, so I'll make a motion to accept.
By Dean, second by
I'll second.
Susan. Any other discussion? There's quite a lot to digest there, and it's neat to see some improved reports that can let us look at comparisons quickly and eyeball maybe questions. All in favor of that motion, please say aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Any other business we need to address today at the IDA board level before we move into consideration for executive session? Hearing none, I would suggest and jump into, if I don't get this right, I suggest we move into executive session to discuss personnel. I don't expect any decisions to be made there, but we will come back out of executive session and publicly close the meeting. Is that a motion that works, Sue?
It is.
Anyone care to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
By Giovanni, second to that motion. Thank you, Mark. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. We'll move into executive session.
One.
Welcome back, everybody, to the meeting of the Orange County IDA for February 21st. We motioned to come back out of executive session. No action was taken in executive session. And unless someone has another thought, I'd ask a motion to adjourn the public meeting of the IDA. By
Make
Mark
that motion.
Green, second. Dean, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.
you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, you too.
See you
Thanks.
soon.